Welcome to the Phillip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Phillip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phillip Wylie Show. Today I'm joined by my good friend Matt Scheurer. So Matt has been on my old podcast. We met through the cybersecurity community, and I guess we probably met for the first time in person probably back in 2019.
Sounds about right. It's been a hot moment, but
yeah, because it's before the pandemic, and I think you were in town for the ISC2 conference, I believe.
It was actually the ISSA International Conference.
Okay. Something like that. But yeah, it's thanks for joining. It's great to have you on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you finally worked out, and thanks for coming on last minute. The travel and stuff I have coming up, I've got to get the podcast recorded, edited, and published, before Monday, since they go out on Tuesdays. So yeah, I had a big library built up of podcasts, and then while I was laid off, I was kind of enjoying the time off and not doing too much podcasting, so I kind of lost that big library of extra content that I had. But it works out better this way. There's pros and cons to when you record a lot of content, because then it takes a while for the episodes to come out. It could take like months. And so it's almost kind of better when you do them less frequently, so that way you've got the content coming out more fresh or whatever. So
sounds good. I always get kind of just amped up. Not that I'm nervous or scared or anxious or whatever. I just get geared up when I've got a thing coming up. And so I've so much energy, and I'm so looking forward to it. I'm so chomping at the bit that I tend to not sleep well. So sometimes the last minute is almost easier for me.
Yeah, same here. You seems like I'm not one of those kind of people that does a lot of prep. So when you've got so much time to think about it and prep about it, prep on the talk or whatever you're doing, you got all that time to prepare for it. Sometimes it's just not a good thing for me. So So why don't we start out by you introducing yourself and then kind of sharing your hacker origin story?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Scheurer. My hacker origin story, I guess growing up as a kid, I was just always enthralled with hackers and hacker lore and all the things that people would do with technology that the people that designed it didn't anticipate. So people would mess with phone systems, they would mess with satellite dishes, and they would figure out how to do different things with their devices that people didn't really anticipate. And so for me, growing up in that, and then the movie War Games comes out, and something that was highly inspirational, just as simple as a movie coming out was, it was the subject matter and the fact that you had the Matthew Broderick character doing a lot of cool hacking tricks and so forth. And really it was one of those things I remember as a kid, hooking up devices to do things that I think most of my friends just thought, that's weird. Why would anybody do that? But for me, like, well, look, I can fire off video games and patch in audio feeds, and I can sort of make my own music videos with all these explosions going off and all this cool stuff. And so for me, it was just a matter of playing around. And then sometime later, I remember when a magazine came out for Information Week, and it featured Dan Farmer, and he was sort of getting a lot of publicity because he had just authored the Satan tool for scanning networks, one of those early on vulnerability scanners that did a lot of things, and he'd open sourced it. Everybody's talking about all that stuff. The thing that struck me is, wait, he does computer security for a living at Sun Microsystems, and I just thought that was the most amazing career that I'd ever heard of, because up until that point, nobody I'd ever read about, and I was always real well read, rather, on IT subjects and that sort of thing, and I had no idea that somebody could actually get a job doing that. And it took a long time, but eventually I got my opportunity, and I guess I just haven't looked back ever since.
Very cool. So, if you could share with our listeners what type of security that you do, what discipline do you work in?
Sure, absolutely. So I guess my bread and butter, if you will, is primarily digital forensics and incident response. So I mostly work as an incident responder. I will say that I am very much a purple teamer at heart, and so I always advocate for purple teaming. I like doing a lot of offensive security stuff because it makes me better as a defender and also as a forensic analyst when I can do things and then I can go back after the fact and look at the forensic artifacts that are left behind. And that really helps me answer those who, what, when, why, where, and how type questions when I'm doing a security investigation.
Yeah, very cool. So I imagine you probably can do some pretty cool anti-forensics too, I would imagine.
Yeah, you definitely get accustomed to seeing things, and it's sort of interesting because even this week I sort of looked at a evasion technique that I hadn't really contemplated before, I hadn't really thought about before. So to sort of see it happen firsthand, it's like, that was kind of actually clever. Yeah, when I see something that's just not run of the mill, but had a little bit of thought and effort into it, not that I fully respect the threat actor that's doing these things or would advocate for what they're doing, but I do like seeing new things that I haven't quite come across before. To me, that keeps things interesting. And what I like about incident response specifically is you're always where the action is. If you have an internet presence, it's under attack all day, every day. It just simply never stops.
Yeah, I imagine you get to see some pretty cool stuff when you're investigating that or just kind of investigating some malicious traffic.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time looking at malicious traffic. It's a little harder to do PCAP analysis today than it was in the past since so much traffic is encrypted now, but every once in a while you get to bust that out. There are some tricks you can do to ensure you can get the key to decrypt the packets and do a full packet analysis, but by and large, I find now we mostly live in log files, and so it's a matter of understanding where log files live, where they exist, and being able to look through them and then come up with good searching strategies so you can process huge, insane quantities of data and make sense of it or get the answers you're looking for.
So, we always have people from different areas of security, but not often someone from the digital forensics and incident response realm. So if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing kind of your thoughts and opinions on the education path for someone that wanted to get into digital forensics and incident response.
Absolutely. It's something I'm passionate about because honestly, I don't feel like we do a great job in the industry of explaining to people here are the essential skills that you should go about learning and the things that you should actually know. We do probably a better job on the offensive security side. And even if we didn't, you could just kind of go through like a Kali Linux and learn all the tools that are in the default menus. Not that there aren't some defensive tools. So like Autopsy, for example, is built in Kali Linux. That you can use for forensic analysis, that sort of thing. But obviously, it's mostly renowned as an offensive security suite. One of the things in interviewing job candidates in the past was, sort of recurring themes I noticed. One of the things that tends to happen now is that people coming fresh out of school tend to not have a solid background in systems administration. I know you've got a history of that. I certainly do as well. And so you start understanding how servers work, where things live, where they should and shouldn't be on an endpoint. You understand a little better how the networking behind the scenes works. You understand sort of the history and changes within the network technology stack. So I think when you can get back to some of those basics and understand basic networking, when you can learn the Linux command line, when you can learn where things should be on a Windows endpoint, for example, you are then able to better make a determination. Is this just suspicious or is it malicious? One of the things I have done specifically to try to address that problem myself is I put together a talk mostly a couple years ago, and it's called Becoming an IR Superstar. I've given that talk a lot of places. There's been a few recordings of it. I think probably the best one is Secure WV has a decent recording of that. So if you look at Secure WV's YouTube channel, Secure West Virginia, you can find that talk out there. There's the video. Also, for anybody who goes out to slides.dfirmat.com, you can find anywhere I've given that talk and grab the slide deck and share that out. Well, one, you can read through it yourself, but two, if you have coworkers or friends, you can share that out with them. And I've actually had a lot of people do just that. It's kind of funny. I remember I had a lady running after me at Black Hat saying, "Hey, aren't you the IR superstar guy?" And it's like, yeah. And it's like, "Oh, I've got your slide deck. I've read through the whole thing. I've shared it out with a bunch of people, and it was fantastic." And so really it talks a lot about just understanding some of the basic stuff that people, if they've come through school recently or certification study, maybe they haven't really learned some of these core competencies, and really it explains what you should learn. And since I don't expect people to go spend 5 figures for an expensive training course, everything that I reference in that slide deck is either absolutely free or very minimal cost. A couple of the things I've built in there myself, like a Wireshark workshop that'll help teach you some very basics on packet analysis over the course of about 2 hours. But you do some pretty cool stuff in that. And the other is called CyberChef Workshop. And for anybody not familiar with CyberChef, it's a great tool for digital forensics and incident response because it's capable of so many things, whether it's converting Unix epoch timestamps or Linux epoch timestamps to your either GMT or your local time. It does just so many other things. You can use it for decoding. You can use it to decrypt things. If you have an XOR key that you can figure out, you can throw the magic function into your recipe, and you can from there try to determine what something is. Because when things aren't human readable, then it becomes a question of, well, why aren't they readable? And the other thing I talk about are the magic bytes, magic numbers, file headers, file signatures. It goes by a lot of different names, but I covered that in that Becoming an IR Superstar talk. Because one thing you will encounter when you do digital forensics and incident response is things are encoded all the time. And we see a lot of base 64 encoding, and just being able to recognize those things. For example, when you see the string, you may not know exactly what it is until you start decoding it, but being able to recognize what you're looking at goes a long way towards helping when you're trying to answer those kinds of questions.
So are there any kind of roles that you think are good to start out with first? I mean, because I know a lot of these roles, even like pen testing people, will tell aspiring pen testers or people going through their learning process, you can't jump right into it, which it happens all the time. But as far as your opinion goes, is it better to start off as a SOC analyst and move into digital forensics, or would you recommend someone just going ahead, learning and jumping right into it?
I tend to think that having a little bit of SOC experience goes a long way towards understanding how digital forensics works. Not saying that it'll get you there all the way, but it gives you that foundational knowledge. The more things you see, I think the easier it is then to adapt to what it is that you're doing. So but you have to really think of things how a security analyst would think. I think if you're looking to transition either into next level of incident response, or if you're trying to get into digital forensics. So understanding concepts like the order of volatility, which is the order in which you should collect system artifacts. For example, you want to get a memory dump of a system during the acquisition phase fairly early on the process, because if the user logs off, you're going to lose data. If the system gets restarted, all that volatile data goes away. Versus if you have, say, like a USB thumb drive and it's plugged into the system, not that you couldn't have some malware that's changing the files on there, but it's probably a little more rare, if you will. So I think you're more likely to encounter, that memory is got a greater chance to go away than, say, that USB storage device. And so I think the more you are around those things, the more you can get a chance, especially if in an organization there are people doing the very thing that you want to do. It gives you a great opportunity while you're learning to sort of pick their brain, get those little tips and tricks, and understand what it is that you're looking to do. It also, I think, helps because so many digital forensic analysts look at potential insider threat situations. So if you can understand how somebody might try to exfiltrate data, for example, get around DLP type solutions, if you've seen it in attempts at that as you've done investigations and so forth, it just broadens that understanding and helps you really understand higher level. And I think that's one of the bigger things that people struggle with as they enter the industry, is just how to think like a security analyst, how to think like an attacker, how to associate every single thing they see and start asking themselves, what are the security implications of this thing? How, if I was doing this, what might I try to do to get around it? For example, if I'm building an application or working on APIs, how might this be abused? You start to understand how data gets into something, how it gets out of something, and now you're starting to really think like a security analyst would.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I'd really like, not only because you're an awesome guest, but like having you on for the fact that I think we really need to get the word out on more areas of cybersecurity. Because, when you talk about cybersecurity to someone that has no experience, they're going to think hacking or whatever. They're not really thinking of the defensive side or the investigative side. So I think it's really good for the word to get out on that, because an example is, and this is not a good example as far as trying to get someone to do other things or opening up people's eyes, but it was an example of someone I used to work with that they were like, started out like on the help desk or something in the company working in IT. They were taking all these SANS courses for digital forensics. And they finally decided that they were going to take the GPIN to help them be better at digital forensics. And so sure enough, they took the course and they liked pen testing better. So they went that way. So if he had never tried pen testing, he may have not been doing something he's passionate about, or maybe have not found some things he's good at, because, sometimes if you're passionate about it, you're going to put in the work and you're going to put in the hard work to do it. And if it's something that comes more natural for you, then that may be a path to go down. But sometimes whenever people are just seeing pen testing and they think, I'm going to be a pen tester, go get all this training, get into it, and it's not what they thought it would be, they end up being disappointed. So I think, getting exposure to your area of cybersecurity and others, so that way people can make a more informed decision and find something that's more interesting to them.
Yeah, and I would say that offensive security skills don't go to waste in the incident response side of things, because when you understand the tools that a pen tester or any offensive security person, including threat actors themselves, use, when you understand what the tools are, what they do, how they work, and then you can go that extra level and understand, or begin to understand, here's the forensic artifacts these things leave behind. And everybody, a lot of people from the outside looking in seem to think, oh, I definitely want to do offensive security, but I've actually talked to other people that kind of flipped the other way. They started out doing defensive security stuff. They got into penetration testing and thought, I really want to get back to my blue team roots, and I've actually made the flip back around the other way again. It's so yeah, not everything is gonna speak to every person individually, and I think really with anything in IT or infosec, the more exposure you can get to the more different things, the more you can start to begin to understand really what your wheelhouse is or what you find the most rewarding work for you personally.
Yeah, very, very good. It's really kind of interesting. And now there's just so many different areas of cybersecurity. Because when I was getting started, my first security job was in January 2004. And back then, of course, you had digital forensics. You didn't have a lot of pen testing roles, but you had a lot of firewall administrative roles, and it just wasn't as many different roles in cybersecurity as there now. It's amazing because, as technology's gotten more advanced, as defense systems have gotten more advanced, there's so many more different roles and stuff. So it's a really good market nowadays for someone. It's just, to be able to find something they're interested in. Because like I said, at one time, there wasn't all the options that there is now.
Yeah, definitely. And even for those that aren't doing information security stuff, there's nothing wrong with starting in a governance, risk, and compliance, because then you start understanding what controls are. You start getting, I can't stress this enough, the professional networking aspects within this space really pay dividends. And as somebody that's doing audit work, it may not seem like the most technical hands-on stuff, and in a sense it isn't, but you get to know departments, you get to know what people do, but you start getting to know those individuals if you interact with them on a recurring basis. And it's remarkable that if you're on the outside trying to figure out how to break into information security, it's not a path that a lot of people look at, but it's definitely one that is, there as a potential. As I tell people, really, it seems like from my observations, finding the first information security job that you can land is probably one of the hardest things there is to do. Once you have that and you have established a little bit of experience, then that opens up a lot more doors. If you have 3 to 5 years of experience of doing something, then people, are a little more willing to have discussions with you and give you an opportunity. So, that first step is a huge one. But, if you can find it, even if it's maybe not the most optimal thing that you want to do, and then just keep working on your professional network, getting to know people and chatting with folks. And again, finding people in a role and asking questions. Well, what should I focus my learning on? So many people come to me and they say, well, what degree should I get? Or which certification should I get? There's nothing wrong with those pursuits. You'll definitely learn something. But I think if you really want to get to where it is you ultimately want to be, you're better off just finding out what are the baseline skills and knowledge that I need to learn, and building a solid work history behind you. And the more people you know and have in your professional network, I think the easier those next steps become.
Yeah, one of the things I was wanting to discuss too, because for those that's not listening, for those listening that might not know of you, you do a lot of speaking. You're keynoting all these different places and speaking all these different places. So, kind of, how did that start out for you? How did you kind of get started doing public speaking?
Yeah, so I've been doing public speaking for about 9 years. Interestingly enough, it started when DerbyCon 5 DerbyCon in Louisville was a security hacker conference I went to most years. I think I only missed 2 of them in their history. Both times I missed were circumstances completely outside my control. But I didn't get a DerbyCon 5 ticket in time, and the conference sold out. And I had never submitted a CFP anywhere before. I didn't know that I had, maybe the best odds of getting accepted, because, like, what am I going to talk about? I don't have this bleeding edge and 0-day vulnerability talks, or here's how I've, compromise this thing, or here's the CVE, and here's everything that led into it. I didn't have anything that was that amazing, but I thought I'm a pretty good writer. I already don't have a ticket to the conference, and oh, what the heck? Why don't I just write up, make it sound like $1 million if I can, a talk idea I'd had. I've been just toying around with. This is before Ring cameras and all these other doorbell type camera systems, and cloud enablement, and being able to just get the stuff on your mobile devices, and all of that stuff. Long before that, these things didn't really exist. So I'd been playing around building your own surveillance system, and I'd just been using stuff around the house, including cell phones that had no service. That was part of the drivers. That'd be good for something. I don't know what. And so playing around with webcam apps, and then a open source closed caption TV system that supported IP cameras. If it could get an IP address and stream, by gosh, it would work in this platform. And so I literally wrote a talk called Surveillance Using Spare Stuff, submitted to the conference. I already didn't have a ticket, so I thought I have absolutely nothing to lose. If they tell me this talk is terrible, go play in traffic. Again, I didn't have a ticket, so what was there to lose? And really, DerbyCon 7 rolled around, the same thing happened, and I've been playing around with regex quite a bit, and a lot of people can't stand regex. A lot of people were thoroughly confused by regex, and I just thought, well, shoot, why don't I submit a talk on that? Because everybody always submits big talks on the new hotness, whatever the new hotness thing is. And right now, clearly it's AI. Next year, couple years from now, it'll be something else. But anyway, I always try to avoid those because you're competing with so many other people who want to talk about that same subject. I thought probably nobody is going to submit a talk on regex, and they're going to sit around at the CFP selection committee going, well, which regex talk do we like better? That probably wasn't going to happen. So sure enough, I submitted a talk on that. It got accepted again, and so I got in the DerbyCon 7, and just sort of snowballed from there. I guess I should say the other thing with DerbyCon 5 is I was still on the outside looking in of breaking into an InfoSec career. Still didn't have a job doing InfoSec. I was still a sysadmin. And what I didn't know heading into that was that was such a prestigious conference in hacker conference circles, that if you had a speaker credit there, that was all the InfoSec street credibility you needed to get an opportunity to work in the space. And so it opened up that door. And one thing I've learned over the course of doing technology roles for quite a while is you're only ever one manager that maybe you don't get along with the best, from having a great job to one you could take it or leave it. And in some cases, maybe just outright want to leave it. So for me, I found that having my name out there enough that if I ever found myself in a situation like that, definitely was going to be much more beneficial than trying to compete with everybody else, just cold sending a resume in. And that's getting back to what I talked about earlier with the professional networking and how important that is to building your career.
Yeah, definitely. Especially nowadays with the current hiring market, it's a little bit more difficult these days. So definitely helpful. So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to share that we didn't discuss?
Think about it. I've got a bunch of speaking engagements coming up. If you want to follow me on the X social media platform, formerly called Twitter, I'm at C3RKAH. Feel free to follow me out there. Also, everything I post, or everything I'm doing, I post on LinkedIn. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request out there. Be happy to connect with some of your listeners. And obviously, you can search my name on YouTube and often find a lot of talks I've given in the past, that sort of thing. So, but if you do go to an event or a conference that I'm at, say hello. I'm actually pretty friendly and happy to chat with folks and offer whatever advice I can, or just kind of talk about stuff. Love to hear what other people are working on. If you have questions about doing digital forensics and incident response, or a particular area or topic, hit me up. I'm reasonably knowledgeable. I've been in the space for a while and done a lot of different things. And even though it's my core focus now, and I've been wear all the hats, security engineer in previous roles. So I've done things like vulnerability management and manual validation and a little bit of AppSec stuff. And I've dabbled in enough offensive security stuff. I can talk a little bit about some of that. So just definitely reach out, say hello.
Yeah. And we'll be sharing Matt's social media resources in the show notes, so you'll be able to easily find Matt. So thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me today. It was a pleasure to have you on and kind of catch up a little bit. We haven't spoke since probably Black Hat and DEF CON last year, I guess. Or we haven't in person. We've messaged, but not actually on a video call or in person. So
yeah, that sounds accurate. Been great catching up for sure.
Yeah, same. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you at summer camp.
Absolutely. I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Phillip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Phillip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Phillip Wylie. Until next time.